This podcast may contain explicit language. Are you not entertained? Gladiator, next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
We also welcome our returning celebrity guest, a man who's been with us every single season of Gmote, the founder of Westport Studios and the host of the B2B Business Class podcast. Making his 10th appearance on the show to date, it's Robb Conlon.
It is fun to be here a 10th time, Tom and Dana. Thank you guys as always. It's a pleasure to be here, especially for one of my absolutely favorite movies of all time.
So, with that, if you are not watching on YouTube, I am displaying what Kieran is already modeling, and that would be, this is your t-shirt show.
I have been looking forward to this we were discussing before we were recording, I didn't think this was my t-shirt episode. I thought the next one I'm on in a few weeks, I thought that was my t-shirt episode. So I'm pumped to receive that, and I always love to rep my friends' podcasts whenever I'm out and about, which is great.
I am very much hoping, although with the U.S. mail, who knows, but let's assume that you'll have this in 2 weeks to model for your 11th appearance.
Right on, man. Right on.
So we keep giving out more and more stuff. I think we have had at least 2 different people join the 5-Timers Club so far this season, and we have now had our second person into the 10-Timers Club. You two, I guess, are 2 of 3 people to pass the 10-time barrier, but you both yet have not gotten to the heights of my mother at 15.
I was going to say that there was one person who's way ahead of us. It's your ma.
We also welcome our second guest for the evening, a man who, of course, needs no introduction. Making his 12th appearance on the show to date, the host and creator of the Best Picture cast, please welcome back, Kieran B.
I thank you. Here, listen to the crowd roar. They like me because I don't kill these podcasts too quickly. I let them squirm a bit, and sometimes hours long. But I heard I heard a couple of busy little bees were talking Gladiator, and I had to come by and see what these busy little bees were up to. Also, last time, Tom, you sold me a couple giraffes, and they haven't quite built a family yet. So we'll discuss that on the break.
I think they're queer.
Oh, well, listen. We'll have to litigate that later. Anyway, I'm glad to be back.
Anyway, gentlemen, are we ready to discuss Gladiator?
Absolutely. I've been here for all types of films. It's nice to be here for one that I saw back when it came out in theaters 25 years ago. It's been a part of my life since. So, nothing against Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, but it's time to talk some Gladiator.
This is your third most recent film that we've discussed. So, Gran Torino is the most recent. You were also on for Lost in Translation. So normally you've been on for some older films, some older favorites, but I believe this is also the second time you're joining us for a Best Picture winner.
Yes. I dig the throwbacks. Was Best Years of Our Lives the other one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was a revisit. This is not. So, without further ado, tonight for our 259th episode, we discuss the Best Picture winner of 2000, Gladiator, directed by Ridley Scott, written by David Franzioni, John Logan and William Nicholson, music by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard, cinematography by John Mathiasson, starring Russell Crowe as Maximus Decimus Meridius, Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus, Connie Nielsen as Lucilla, Oliver Reed as Antonius Proximo, Derek Jacobi as Senator Gracchus, Jaimon Hounsou as Juba, Richard Harris as Marcus Aurelius, Ralph Mueller as Hagen, Tommy Flanagan as Cicero, David Schofield as Senator Falco, John Shrapnel as Senator Gaius, Thomas Arana as Quintus, Spencer Treat Clark as Lucius Verus, and David Hemmings as Cassius. Background for the movie: Gladiator was released on May 5th, 2000, making this its 25th anniversary. On a budget of $110 million, the film would go on to gross $465 million worldwide, finishing as the number 2 film of 2000. Now, did anyone look up what the top 10 for 2000 happened to be? It's a really weird list. It's a completely different time in film history.
Well, let's think here.
There are like 3 on here that I've never heard of. I take that back. It's only 2, but still.
What year is Fellowship of the Ring?
That was the year after, so that's 2001.
Dang it. Shoot, I was like, right.
You'd be in the right neighborhood mostly, but no, not quite.
Yeah, 2000's like an in-between year with...
Okay, so we do have a few things, but number 10 was What Lies Beneath, which I've never heard of.
Really?
Number 9...
X-Men or X-Men?
Yes, X-Men is number 9.
Yeah.
The original. 8 was The Perfect Storm.
Clooney.
Okay.
7, Meet the Parents, which we've covered on this show. 6, Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. 5, a movie I've never heard of before called Dinosaur.
Dinosaur is an animated.
Is that the animated Disney one?
I think it is. It Disney?
I thought that's the Good Dinosaur, which I thought was
there's
like a
another
Pixar
one
thing
that's
later.
like sort of like realish look, sort of kind of real. Looked like that Walking with Dinosaurs documentary that was on Discovery Channel 2 decades ago or whatever it might be. It was kind of...
I think it's Pixar, isn't it?
I think it might have been Pixar, but it's not your standard Pixar style with, the kind of the cartoony features and like the caked up moms and things like that. So
you guys are thinking of The Good Dinosaur, which is much later.
Nope. I know it's about an iguanodon because he got the thumbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I've never heard of it. So 4, What Women Want. Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt.
I forgot that movie existed.
3, Castaway.
Well done.
Yep. And number 1, the worst of the Mission Impossibles. Number 2.
Oh, shit, I love that movie.
Fighting Words. Fighting Words is a great movie. The great John Woo.
Freaking terrible. I refuse to watch it.
It's
gonna go listen to my Limp Bizkit over here and
Limp Bizkit in all its glory.
Yes.
Oh,
Metallica's I Disappear in the closing credits.
it is the worst hand-to-hand combat I think I've ever seen, and it's totally unnecessary. Anyway, critics were mostly positive at the time, particularly for Ridley Scott's visual style and Russell Crowe's lead performance. But many criticized the screenplay for being without depth and lacking in true character development. Nevertheless, Gladiator was nominated for 12 Oscars, including Director for Ridley Scott, Original Screenplay, Supporting Actor for Joaquin Phoenix, Original Score, Cinematography, Art Direction, and Film Editing. Gladiator would win the Oscars for Best Picture, Actor for Russell Crowe, Visual Effects, Sound, and Costume Design. The film has since been further criticized for its historical inaccuracies. However, in 2021, Empire magazine ranked Gladiator 39th on its list of the 100 best movies of all time list and declared it as the 22nd best film of the 21st century. The review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes included the film on its list of 140 essential 2000s movies. The character Maximus placed 95th on Empire's list of 100 greatest movie characters. Gladiator received a somewhat maligned, but ultimately financially successful sequel in 2024, and the third film is currently planned.
Dear God, no.
What are they going to stuff into the arena this time? Maybe some dinosaurs.
Gladiator currently holds an 80% rating among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 67 score on Metacritic, and a 4.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
All right, I'm ready for the hoots and the hollers. This is the first time I've seen it.
Wow.
What?
That's amazing.
Really?
Yep. I'd never
I'm
seen
excited
it before.
now. Let's go.
I mean, it came out when I had small children, so it wasn't going to be something I was going to sit and watch on family night with the kids. And I just never got around to watching it. So it's one of the films that I kept saying, I probably should watch it.
I suppose I would have been 10 years old. My next sister would have been 7, and Sarah would have been 4. Yeah.
And it's not something your mother would enjoy. So that meant that I'd have to watch it by myself. I just never got around to it.
So my relationship to the movie is a little meandering. Do you remember the DVD service we used to have that would like send one to us every month for years?
Yes.
Okay. And this was one of the DVDs. We've had Gladiator as a DVD for 20 some years. It's at the house. And so I never personally watched it at that point because, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, it's not yet the thing that I can really invest in. It's an R-rated movie. It's got a lot of violence, etc. So it was not something I put on myself. But there was one of the exchange students who will remain nameless, partially because I don't remember his name, but that came over to the house and broke your projection TV sound because he had it cranked to the entire max to watch this movie on like a random Saturday.
Was it Gus?
No, the one from Bulgaria.
Oh, yeah.
So I saw bits and pieces of it while he was watching this on a random Saturday. And then he followed that up with a double of Saving Private Ryan.
Dude had taste.
That's not bad. I'll give him a little bit of credit there. But I don't think I fully watched this movie in its entirety until I was probably late into high school. So we're talking like 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere in that range. And I've probably seen it a half dozen times by this point. It's not something I return to just readily, but I think the last time before this week that I had watched it was I showed it to my little sister, Sarah, during the pandemic, because she's a history nerd and would you call her an archaeologist? Or I guess what I can't ever figure out what degree or not she has.
Well, they don't offer archaeology. It's called classics. So it includes archaeology, but it also includes all of the mythology and such. So she's like into all of the whole history of Greece and Rome and all of the various gods and everything.
Fair enough. I guess she says now that she liked it. I remember at the time she hated it because of the historical inaccuracy, but it's got kind of a winding road for me. So, Rob, this is one of your favorites. You often come on for your singular favorites. What is your relationship to this?
This movie has woven its way through my life quite a bit. I quoted this for my high school graduation. A friend of mine has named his son Maximus.
Same here.
Right. Okay. We've got that. That's awesome. Max is now like 7 years old, which is wild. But I've always enjoyed this movie. I've used "Are you not entertained" plenty of times in, you know, situations where people should have been entertained by what was going on. For me, it's quotable. It's very much unlike you, Tom. You were 10 when this happened. I was 14 or 15, and I could watch R-rated movies and things like that. And so, what did we all do? You know, we're all 14, 15 years old, pumped full of Mountain Dew and testosterone. We're gonna watch Gladiator, man. Like this is it. So that's my relationship to this movie. Last time I saw it was just a couple of weeks ago, and I figured I was fresh enough to watch this because, you know, I love the movie and things like that. But I actually showed it to my wife's cousin's wife, so he was also considered, oddly enough, a friend of mine in high school. Very funny to meet somebody who's like, "Hey, we're friends. I'm marrying your cousin." Very funny stuff there. But my wife Katie, her cousin's wife, had never seen this, and again, she's probably in the same boat as Dana was that her son was, you know, a baby when this came out. So that's the fabulous relationship I've had with this movie.
And Kieran, I know that you are obviously no stranger to Best Picture winners. You covered this last year on your show with a great conversation that involves some wonderful Proximo conversation.
Yes, thanks you. I'm a big Proximo head over here. I'm sure that will come up later, but Gladiator has been a part of my life, man, for quite a while. I was there in theaters when it came out. I was 15. A friend's dad took us to see the movie in theaters. That's, you know, you had to have the guardian, the parent or guardian there with you. So we went and saw it in my hometown, and it was quite the spectacle, as you imagine, for a 15-year-old. And you get the free pass to the rated R in-screen theater viewing, which always has the extra kick to it. We covered this on the podcast last year, as you mentioned, Tom. Thank you very much for those kind words. That was a blast. A love fest there on that one for sure. So when I rewatched for that was a lot of fine tuning. But I rewatched it last night with my fiance, who had never seen it before. And I know, never seen it. So when I really love watching movies with, especially people you're close with for the first time, things you're familiar with, because it's a bit like bringing a close friend to a party with new people, and you're seeing the movie through new eyes. It's like, how are these characters going to mesh with my new friends? Are they going to vibe with Commodus? Are they going to vibe with Proximo? So you're looking at everything through a new lens of a new eye. Where when I covered this last year, it's like, oh, I'm running over stuff that I know so well. Last night, I'm almost nervous watching. It's like, how's this going to go over? And for the first 10 minutes, it was a little touch and go, a little rocky there in the battle scenes. But she absolutely loved it. And it was a great time. And it was very fun for me to have the movie go over in such a great way. So, and I too have a friend who named his son Maximus, but just this past year. So it's a little newborn baby named Maximus. So it echoes along through eternity as it goes here.
Very fun. Very fun. I will say this is a great first watch movie. I think, well, we'll get into it a little bit. I have some criticisms to lay on this most recent viewing, so I'll tease that here. But Dad, let's start with you. This is your first time through. What do you think the movie's about?
The struggle of power versus public service, I guess. Being magnanimous and being willing to allow the public to control or to have a form of democracy again instead of an emperor. Although really I think it's more about just the battle scenes.
I think that's why most people are invested in this movie, to be quite honest. I'll turn to our two guests here. What do you gentlemen who love this film feel it's about?
For me, Gladiator, and it casts a bit of a wide net with its script and what it does. But for me, Gladiator is about the impact that you leave in the life that you lead based on the hand that you're dealt. Whether you're a slave or the master, whether you're the Caesar or the general or the soldier or the son to be in charge of the kingdom, we're all placed in different areas and different phylums of life. And it's what you do with the time that you have and the people that you meet and the people that you love that echoes in eternity. To me, that's the best way I can generally answer that question.
This movie's about not fucking with public servants.
Yeah.
Leaders are born, they're not created. This movie, to me, more than anything, is about leadership and about Russell Crowe carrying this movie.
I mean, I think that's well said.
Now, if I really wanted to be reductionist, it is I don't want to say medieval, but it is a ancient sports movie that won Best Picture. Because it's basically got all the sports movie tropes.
Yeah, I mean, it's in its own genre with the sword and sandals, which is, kind of been a self-formed cinematic genre, but it definitely shares many qualities with the sports film. I would agree.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of epic proportions to it. It's 2.5 hours, which is kind of a little bit of a throwback for, at least at the time. There were not a ton of Best Picture winners that were like really long. I guess I don't know. Do you remember what the runtime of Titanic is? That might be one of the lone exceptions during like the 90s.
Pretty sure it's at least 3.
Okay.
I'll get it for you.
And never mind. You know what? I'm thinking about it because like the English Patient was also pretty long and pretty epic. So that wasn't like too far before that.
Titanic's 3:15.
Yeah. Okay. It's been a while since I've seen Titanic, with obvious reasons for me, at least.
And what would they be?
I can't stand
He doesn't
Titanic.
like Celine Dion singing.
Well, that too. That song was everywhere and it was pervasive, and I got annoyed with that song because I had to do a sign language performance in like summer school to that song or something. I don't remember. It was embarrassing, and I really don't want to relive that PTSD. But
Tom,
anyway,
you gotta get to the bow of the boat, throw your arms up, and let the wind just go through your hair. Let it loose. Let it free.
2027. It's on the short list along with some other obvious choices.
I'll be looking forward to listening to that and for you revisiting it, because it's a wonderful, wonderful film.
It's the only Leo performance I actively hate. So anyway, moving on. Gladiator is one of the last times a broadly popular movie won over the more artistic films. I think you could roughly say that maybe The Lord of the Rings is truly the last time that I can think of that the broadly popular movie ended up winning. But do you ever see us really returning to that, where there used to be a time and place in Oscars history where you almost had to finish inside the top 10 at the box office that year to even be considered for Best Picture?
How much money did Oppenheimer make?
Okay, that's fair. I think that was number 3 last year.
Yeah.
But think about Nomadland. I mean, even though Everything Everywhere All at Once made a decent amount of money, it was not like
not a blockbuster,
a huge movie.
So, I mean, you carry a pretty good point here. This Oppenheimer would be a recent example, but this does tend, or at least it seems to have gone in ebbs and flows. I'll just start with like the 50s into the 60s, where the road shows were kind of winning, you know, where you had your Around the Worlds and your Ben-Hurs, into the 60s, where the road shows kind of started to run their course a little bit with the My Fair Ladies into the Olivers. And then we look in the 70s, it gets artsy and less blockbustery. Of course, those artsy films are now kind of what we look back at as these iconic films. Jaws again breaks through with a different kind of blockbuster, things changing. And then the 80s, it gets very, very stuffy again. And kind of what I think what you're referring to now is like the not the films that people will be lining up to see.
Well,
the Gandhis and
I might push back on that a little bit, because even in the 70s, the films that ended up winning were still like top 10 hits. And there were several during the 80s, even though you have Your Last Emperor and you have Out of Africa. You do have Rain Man, which was the number 1 film of the year.
89 though, or 88. It's at the very end. And the 90s is again blockbusters again. So I'm just saying it kind of goes back and forth. And those 71s were counterculture. They did end up doing very well at the blockbuster, but they weren't like this is what people are going to see. It ended up drawing attention. And then the 90s gets blockbuster again. And then now we're in a new kind of stuffy where everything is very small and very intellectual in its own way. So I think things will ebb and flow, but I hear your point that it has been a bit of a while since the Gumps and the Gladiators and the Rainmans.
I guess Oppenheimer is an exception from one particular standpoint. I think it's going to be very hard for a broadly popular, or at least like top 10 level popular film to break into that category. And Barbie is also somewhat of an exception in that.
Well, what about Top Gun Maverick?
But that's IP. What I'm saying is the franchise movies, Top Gun Maverick has some space and some distance from the original, and so it doesn't always feel like it's IP or a direct sequel, but it is. And everything that's pretty much riding into the top 10 anymore for film in an average year is going to be capes and IP, and we're going to get a freaking Kool-Aid movie by the end of this.
Please no.
I see what you're saying, like a Black Panther, a Wicked, they're all part of like a franchise. You're saying like a
right. Dune.
But then I can flip that question on itself. Let the Oscars aside. How many original stories are making the top 10 at the box office anyway? I mean, most top 10 box offices are sequels and IPs.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
You look at the other films, at least currently for the domestic box office right now. Minecraft is number 1. Captain America is number 2. Mufasa is 3. Dogman, Snow White, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Moana 2 is just after Sinners. And then you start to have like some other ones that did okay. But I guess Sinners is somewhat of an outlier comparatively, because even a movie that a bunch of people on film Twitter were raving about, Black Bag, just didn't do that well.
Yeah, and this isn't new. I mean, if you look back at 15 years ago, I just mentioned this year, 2011, just because I was looking with a friend recently, the year the artist won, just what the top 10 were, and they were all sequels and franchises. It was all Harry Potters and you know, How to Train Your Dragon 4s and all that stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a different kind of world we're living in with what draws at the box office.
Well, it's been twofold, which is what's really affected it. One is the pandemic and the fact that people got used to staying home and watching stuff on television, and so much stuff was streamed. And the other is the strike, the writers and directors strike last year. Because just when you started seeing Hollywood start to rear up and people going back to the theaters, we lost all our content. And people are kind of like, it may take 5-10 years for it to regenerate now, because people were gung-ho to get back into the theaters because they'd been sitting at home. Now there was nothing there to watch, so they went back to sitting at home and going, this is pretty good. And the popcorn's cheaper, the soda's cheaper.
Yeah, the pricing has definitely affected things where it used to be a really cheap entertainment form, and now it's, you got to upgrade everything. It's premium seating. It's all of the concessions are 3 times what they should be for what they actually cost. I think you could even argue away maybe Oppenheimer isn't, because Christopher Nolan, every time he releases something, his name on the poster is the brand. It's like an IP to itself. Every time he releases a film, it's big. Like, you're not going to tell me The Odyssey won't be a top 10 film of that year. And I think it's probably going to be the same thing when Tarantino releases seemingly his last film, if he's going to hold to this thing.
Well, and sometimes it's just the individuals and what they do. Quite frankly, I think if Taylor Sheridan would have some guy standing in front of a camera reading the phone book, it would be a top 10 draw for some people, as long as he had a cowboy hat on.
Yeah, I don't think you can punish auteurs' work and, associate it with IP just because they've been successful at storytelling. I mean, then if we keep putting limits on everything, it's like we're like Gladiator wasn't IP, but now Gladiator 2 is, because they're going back to the idea. Same thing with Top Gun. I get that. But if Christopher Nolan is drawing, it's because he has a vision and a voice. Same with Tarantino, same with Scorsese to a slightly lesser degree at this point in his career. We need more of those types of auteurs, whether it's Bong Joon-ho or Jordan Peele or whoever's Greta Gerwig, whoever's coming up next. We need more of that, and hopefully we're fostering that next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. I obviously look forward to every Christopher Nolan release like it's Christmas. But even somebody that I have a lot of respect for and was very much looking forward to her movie, in Greta Gerwig, is now going to streaming for the next 2 films. And she's doing IP. She's doing 2 Narnia films for Netflix. So it's hard not to get caught into this. I guess I now saw Ryan Coogler's going to do a Black Panther 3. So I don't know.
Got to make that money. I don't know.
I don't blame anybody for making money. And if you make a good film in the process of doing IP, great. I love those. I'm there for all of that. I'm just curious. We don't have a Gladiator, or I'm trying to think, like a Departed, probably a broadly popular film that gets released that's popcorn based and that could finish inside the top 5 that's likely going to compete for Best Picture anytime soon, is going to be my guess. Unless we're truly cyclical and we're on the precipice of kind of somehow reverting back to that, I don't know. But then again, how do you measure box office in this current age anyway, if people are truly going to watch at home, and where streaming is going to be a quarter of every movie made is going to be on streaming and never reach theaters at all?
Mm-hmm. The big ones hit, though. I mean, Barbenheimer would be an example. People are still going out to see films. The mid-range ones are not making the money, but we do still, the theaters aren't quite tapped out yet. I know the horror genre does very well.
That's
obviously
fair.
Children's does very well too. So there is that mid-range. But when you see something like Oppenheimer drawing that type of crowd, I know it's Nolan, but it is encouraging that there are still people that want to go to the theaters, for me.
So, Dad, you ready to dig further into the movie? Are you ready with our plot summary?
I am. In Gladiator, Roman general Maximus Decimus Meridius, Russell Crowe, leads his army to victory in a decisive battle under Emperor Marcus Aurelius. The emperor, disillusioned with his son Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix, wishes to pass power to Maximus to restore the Roman Republic. Before this plan can be enacted, Commodus murders his father and seizes the throne. Refusing to serve the new emperor, Maximus is sentenced to death. He escapes execution but returns home to find his wife and son brutally murdered by Commodus's men. Captured and sold into slavery, Maximus becomes a gladiator under the training of Proximo, Oliver Reed, a former gladiator himself. Maximus ultimately works his way to Rome, igniting a battle not just for revenge, but for the soul of Rome. As the story builds to a final confrontation, Maximus must fight one last time against a corrupt emperor and the cruelty of the empire to restore honor and justice and to fulfill a dying emperor's last hope.
Thank you. Did you know? Russell Crowe admitted that he felt unworthy of all the praise and the Oscar for Best Actor that he got for this film. After seeing the completed film, he felt it was a, quote, director's film, and that the Oscar should have gone to Sir Ridley Scott instead. Did you know? Hans Zimmer's score for Gladiator is one of the best-selling movie soundtracks of all time. Did you know? Although Commodus was initially favored by the Roman people, he lost that status through dramatic acts of megalomania. He is often considered the initiator of the fall of Rome. During his reign, and this is the actual historical record, in case anybody's confused, he incorporated his name into many common terms, such as the terms for money and the people. Eventually, the citizens and the Senate had enough of his rule. He was poisoned, and when he vomited out the poison, he was strangled. Afterward, the Senate returned the language to what it had been before Commodus, and the many statues of himself he'd put up were taken down. Did you know? It is a common misconception that a Roman emperor put his thumb upwards to signify that a gladiator was to be spared, whereas thumb down meant that there would be no mercy for a downed gladiator. In reality, this gesturing was the other way around. Thumb up symbolized a sword action and thus death, and thumb down a sheathed sword or mercy. The crew was aware of this while making the movie, but since thumbs up is considered to be a good sign nowadays, they decided to not unnecessarily confuse the audience. Did you know? A surprising fount of information in terms of Roman history was Connie Nielsen, who has always been fascinated by the period. She would be frequently consulted over accurate historical details. And finally, Jack Gleason modeled his character Joffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones after Emperor Commodus. And with that, we will take our first break and we'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 260th episode, we welcome back Shane Rogers of the Midnight Facts for Insomniacs podcast and Jesse Sertle of Cinemadison to discuss the indie darling, Star Wars from 1977. Written and directed by George Lucas, cinematography by Gilbert Taylor, music by John Williams, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Alec Guinness. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's REELGOOD.
And also, before we get back into the regular heart of the show, Rob, what are you working on and where can people find you?
A lot of things I'm working on right now. I've been doing some web series for folks who are, what I call pod curious. It's been a tremendously successful thing, really getting a lot of traction with that. I actually put it in a business standpoint here. I am this primary salesperson for my, small company. I've had the best 24 hours of prospecting for new business like today and yesterday. It's absolutely wild. So we've been educating a lot of folks on how to use a podcast for their business, a B2B podcast versus something that's B2C or D2C like this is. And we've just been kind of growing ever so slowly. And this year's looking really up for us. So that's what I've been working on. And it's been taking up a lot of my free brain cycles, but I'm pretty happy with where we're going. And the crew I work with is truly a wonderful bunch of people. I'm very lucky to have the talented people that I work with day in and day out. So it's not just me doing stuff. It's all of us.
And if they wanted to know more about you, where can they find you on the socials and the internet and all those great, glorious things?
You can probably find me skulking around a couple of subreddits here and there, but the best place to find me is LinkedIn. Just look up Rob Conlon or Westport Rob, which would bring you to my page. And then, of course, you can visit us at westportstudiosllc.com to see our brand new website, by the way. Just had that come out a couple weeks ago, as well as some of the shows that we work with in various industries to help them really, get to know people better in their space, and of course make better business with those people in their space.
Well, congratulations, Rob and Westport Studios.
Right on,
We
man.
wish you great success going forward, and yet another appearance by a Podcast Town alum going back to season 1. So, but Kieran, what are you working on, and where can people find you?
Yeah, and that's a great thing you're doing over there, Rob. I mean, it's such a growing medium, and there's a lot of people who are coming out with podcasts that need help and need to be streamlined through the process. That's really a great thing you're doing over there. Best Picture Cast, we started up back around the same time that Gmode started up. It was we recorded our pilot at the end of 2019 and launched the beginning of 2020. So if we weren't the same month, we were around the same time, Tom and Dana. So it's been a 5-year run at Best Picture Cast, and we are finally nearing the end of our lengthy list. We just dropped our 81st Best Picture winning episode. I think currently there are 97 winners. So we are getting down there. Moonlight was our most recent release, and we've done a few others. It Happened One Night. Forrest Gump were some recent ones too. Coda, another winner from a couple years ago. So we're getting to that point where I only have so many to choose from, and I'm very precious about the list and whatnot. So finally, Joey R kind of sat me down like a hoarder whose room is getting too crowded. It's like, all right, we start by throwing out one thing and then we throw them all. So I think we have now finally litigated what will be in the final season, what will finish this season. So not quite ready to reveal it to everyone yet, but I would like to put out there that I've been sat down and calmed down and put toward, hey, you got to make some decisions now. You can't just let this fester. So looking forward to it. So we have some fun ones coming up this season. This summer, we're going to do one of my favorite Best Picture winners, not most people's favorite, in Clint Eastwood's $1 Million Baby. So that one will come out. Look forward to that. And I believe Dances with Wolves is coming up. There's the much anticipated Hamlet episode, which means I have to read Shakespeare before I cover this thing. So I promise you there's some good ones out there too. But check out our Moonlight episodes, a great discussion we had. You can go back to our back catalog. Like I said, it's 81 Best Picture winners covered, everything from The Godfather to Gladiator to Titanic, all the way back to a future episode I'll be on, Lost Weekend, Amadeus. The list goes on and on. So go check out our back catalog. It's pretty fresh. It's designed to be as timeless as some of these films are. So that's Best Picture Cast. You can find us wherever you get your pods, wherever you use social media. We're pretty interactive. It's a crew of friends talking these things. We're not very stuffy and intellectual. I don't know that we're very capable of that. So we're doing what we can over there. So check us out. Always love new listeners.
So Kieran, what are you doing when you're waiting for the next Best Picture to come out? Like, hey, we've got only 16 of these things left. What happens to Best Picture Cast? We people want to know.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big discussion we have to have internally on what the next step is when we finish the list. We have had some good talks, and we are looking into a good system. So it's not just going to be random. It's not going to be us pulling movies out of a hat. We will have a good system and a good shift in what the podcast is, but still stay in the spirit of what we've grown. So I'm looking forward to releasing that to people too. So,
hey, who knows? Maybe expand to all the folks that lost Best Picture.
Perhaps, yes.
I am definitely ready to defend my boy Billy Powell on The Great Ziegfeld and defend Gandhi. Just putting that out there.
Both films will be coming up this season. So, yeah, perhaps as soon as this summer or fall. So, Tom, maybe we can find a way to get you involved somehow. I'll see what I can do, particularly with the Ziegfeld, because you're the only person I know who has defended that film. Not to say there aren't defenders out there. It's not a hot topic of discussion, The Great Ziegfeld. So you don't like walk down Times Square and say, hey, The Great Ziegfeld, have you seen it? It doesn't really happen. But I think that's something we can explore.
Well, if you did, you'd probably be in a loony bin.
Dana, absolutely.
I'm also projected to do the same film, or requested to do the same film for my first appearance, at least, on Shea Cinema. So I'm going to pull double duty on defending Ziegfeld and Billy Powell.
I love it. It's like it's the Great Ziegfeld Tour. I think our own Grant Z had to do that for The Artist. It's like people out there in film Twitter found out he's the only one who loves it, so they're like, come on our podcast. By the end of it, he's like, all right, I'm never talking about The Artist again. That's it. I like the film, and then just leave it there.
I think it's my little sister's favorite movie.
Oh, I love that. That's cool.
So I thought, of course, I had caught up on all of my BPC back catalog the other day, and it took me like 2 weeks to try and catch up on all of 2025 at 3 hours a pop for each one. And then you dropped Moonlight on me. So we were listening to it in the car today, and let me tell you, we have a bone to pick with you.
Okay, cool.
I am wearing this hat for a very strategic reason.
Okay.
It is a Brewer hat.
Uh-oh.
You had some early comments that Cubs fans are not obnoxious, and I have to tell you, that is some East Coast privilege.
Yes, it is. If I had a rocket, I would put all the Cubs fans in the front seat and launch it into the sun. That's ahead of Putin and everybody else. Cubs fans suck. And you know why? Because I used to run the merchandise stores at AmFam Field / Miller Park. Those people are a menace.
Wow.
Chicago sports fans are worse than any of the teams.
Nope.
Like I sports hate the Minnesota Vikings, but I don't hate the Bears because, well, frankly, the Bears always suck, and it has nothing to do with record. But Bears fans are just I don't want to
listen. This may be East Coast rose-colored glasses, and I may just be guilty of editorialism because my first hockey jersey growing up was a Blackhawks jersey. The Madden team I played for was the Bears, or played with was the Bears with Urlacher growing up.
Why would you do that?
I went to Wrigley Field.
Defense.
I don't know. It seemed like a nice, safe central team to pick. I've been to Miller Park too. It's not Miller Park anymore, I don't think. But this is great. I may have to play that clip of you two guys roasting Chicago fans on the podcast just as a little bit of redemption. I love that.
How many times I had to talk to a sheriff's deputy to be like, get these people out of my store?
Going to a Bucks Bulls playoff game was the most atrocious thing I think I can remember in recent memory.
Ugh. Remember when we were outside the United Center and the guys were razzing me about my Packer jacket? Never come to a gunfight with a knife. And I started walking away. He goes, go eat cheese.
It was go make cheese.
Go make cheese.
Like, that's much better.
That's your comeback? Wow.
Yes.
We like that shit. It's really funny. But for everybody listening as to why we know why I don't really like Cubs fans and things like that. But there is a fully operational sheriff's department inside of AmFam Field / Miller Park. And man, I can tell you, every time the Cubs were in town, that place was full. That place was full of overly drunk Illinois people who came and effed around and found out.
That's the part that annoys me the most. It's not all Illinois people. They have invaded the state because when they were still in when the Brewers were still in the American League, people could root for the Cubs and they could root for the Brewers, and they would never meet unless it was the World Series. But now that they're in the same division, we have all these like Southwest Chicago Cub fans in Wisconsin, and it annoys me to no end.
Well, they also started rooting for the Cubs when the Braves left.
Well, they actually have instituted some like only selling tickets to Wisconsin residents there. I don't know if they just did that for the playoffs or whatnot. And I think
it's only the playoffs because they sell out every time the Cubs come, and it's like 60% Cub fans.
They're everywhere.
It's like being at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and the Cardinals create some problems with them too. They got a ton of Cardinal fans too there.
Rose,
but the Cardinals haven't been nearly as good lately, so I don't care as much.
I had a friend post on Facebook a thing with like the ruby slippers, but they were in Cub red and blue, and up the yellow brick road going to Wrigley Field. And she's like, baseball's coming up. Go Cubs, go. And I responded, yeah, that's a typical Cub fan. No heart, no courage, no brain.
So the only fan base that I might dislike more than just general Chicago sports fans is maybe Dallas Cowboy fans. And that might be
They're up there. Philadelphia for me, though. Philadelphia
fans
yeah.
are horrible.
Yeah, Philadelphia sports fans, period.
Brutal. And you don't have to
Boston
cross-
probably too, but I don't come into an interaction with them as much as you probably do, being in between those two.
Yeah.
Eagles, Phillies, forget it. With a PH,
fair.
forget it.
Fair.
And fuck them.
So,
With
But
a
let's-
PH.
but let's move back into the film for the evening. Dad, we left off at best performance.
I'm sorry to interject, just because I know that you've been asking this question recently, Tom. I have to answer just because I've been on the edge of my seat. Dana, this was the first watch for you. Did you like the film?
Yes, I enjoyed the
Yeah.
film. I don't know. Maybe I'd need to watch it again to see how much I liked it. I mean, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was well done. I thought the camera work. I mean, it amazes me how well Ridley Scott always seems to have those epic shots and those massive amounts of people. You know, I mean, it was the same thing with Napoleon when I saw it, which is the film itself. The script was terrible and the concept was bad, but some of the battle scenes were just breathtaking. And same with this. So, but yes, I did.
So, on that same note, who is your best performer?
I have Russell Crowe.
As do I. I have Russell Crowe both in best performance and most charismatic because, as I mentioned before, I think this film is completely carried by him almost 150%. Because I don't think the direction in this is very good. I think the editing kind of makes up for it a little bit. The writing's okay. And this is going to be a hot take. So just be ready. I think Commodus is a little whiny bitch for 2/3 of the film.
That is part of the
Kind of
charm.
a point, right?
That is dead on, dude. That's why he's my pick for best performance. It's because
yes.
after
Yes.
2 minutes of dealing, not even 2 minutes, 20 seconds of dealing with Commodus, you fucking hate him.
Yeah.
I love this. I love Rob. I love that you picked best performance for him. That's amazing. When we did this, we do MVPs, LVPs. He was my MVP
Yep.
of it when we chose that.
Absolutely.
And by the way, my best performance is Russell Crowe. For the
Likewise.
context of this venue, it is Russell Crowe. But my MVP
I'm alone on this?
when
Damn
we
it.
were talking was Joaquin Phoenix, just because you have to draw so much ire and so much hatred in order to fully get this play. I mean, it's in the script. I mean, the horrible fate of his wife and his son is enough to fuel the fire. But there's this little extra like thing he does that just drives you crazy as a viewer. And I love that, Tom, the did you know that you threw out of Joffrey modeling himself after that. Joffrey is one of the most hated characters in television history to the point where the guy can't get any work. Like he
He quit.
He did
It's not even
such
couldn't get work.
a good job.
Jack Gleason quit acting because
Yeah, that's it.
people
He
hated
did
Joffrey.
such a good job at making people hate him that he was like, you know what? I don't want to be in this industry anymore.
I'm out. Yep.
And that roots from Joaquin Phoenix. So amazing. Joaquin Phoenix is my secondary performer there. But I for all the reasons you guys said, I mean, Russell Crowe just steals the
I
show.
stand alone on this. This is terrible. Okay.
Why is it terrible?
So I thought Kieran was with me on this one.
He was my MVP on my own platform. So I don't know. I have an out with secondary performer.
I don't know. I just didn't find the character to be maybe as layered this time around, where he's just like sobbing, ugly crying in front of his dad because I didn't get picked.
Don't you
I
hate
have to
that?
disagree.
Why don't you love me?
There's so much more than that to me, though. I have to disagree that it's not just about him being the emperor. It's him being neglected as his son his entire life for what he even admits his own moral deficiencies or him just kind of being a bit of a bad apple. But his dad was so focused on glory and building the empire, and it was easier for his dad to bond with Maximus than it was with his own son, who was just kind of a little bit of an odd duck, that he just festered and festered and festered over these years until he took the brass ring and then turned the empire into his own thing. I think he's a pretty layered character, and there's all sorts of daddy issues going on here with his character. And yeah, I have fun. I have fun picking the layers off the onion every time I watch this film.
Right down to the incestuous desires.
Wouldn't be an ancient civilization if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Definitely an Oedipal complex.
Not every layer of the onion is exactly fun, but it's there.
Some make you cry, yes.
Yes. Cringe and cry, and yes, all those. It's not historically inaccurate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, circling back to Russell Crowe on this, because I don't want to sweep it under, okay? Russell Crowe carries so much of this film through his just ultra charisma and magnanimity. I think I pronounced that right.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it.
Okay, cool.
The beauty of editing.
He carries this movie because everything is on his shoulders to be the leader throughout the movie. You genuinely feel that when he turns from a guy who's the lowest on the rung to all of a sudden he's just going to appear in Rome and he's going to be this ultra celebrity, that somehow in this culture, Tom Brady is more important than the president of the United States. Because that's the equivalent of what we're essentially going to. Is the giant sports star is more important and influential than the guy who's actually running the country.
Do you view this as an impossible reality, Tom?
Oh, no, but I'm saying that you
play this back in 5 years.
You believe that you could put your faith that Russell Crowe is a magnanimous and bona fide leader that you'd want to get behind. There is in no way any question that he is a leader of men throughout the entirety of this movie.
And in addition to that, as I did pick him for my top performer for this platform, he is a bona fide star in this, and a star that deserves the win for lead actor, in my opinion. And that's not always like a tier that matches up. We get our movie star, and then we get our great kind of performative actor. But when the two meet, it's really something special. And he rode that into the following year. I feel he should have won 2 years in a row with A Beautiful Mind. I know some people don't love that film, and I love Denzel too in Training Day. But this is an undeniable star-making performance. And what a heater he was on in this little 3-year run of his. And you can't, I mean, you know, but my fiance Tiffany was watching it last night, and she was in awe. She's just Maximus. I mean, how can you not? It's a great performance.
I would even extend it to a 5-year run when you're talking about like LA Confidential and putting that in there as well.
Oh yeah.
Other best secondary performances.
Mine was Joaquin.
I had Ridley Scott, and it's primarily for the battle scenes. I thought the overall directing was but the battle scenes were just breathtaking. So I gave that to him primarily for the battle scenes.
If I may nitpick just slightly, I think Ridley Scott does have the capacity to do a lot of great action sequences. But there are two things about this particular movie that annoy me about some of the action sequences watching it this time. One is the weird, like, fast motion slow-mos that he uses that seem very 300-like. And it's been so overused at this point that I find it annoying to watch that many of them when they're in between, like, transitional stuff, and it doesn't need to be there. The other thing, I thought there was a lot of heavy editing, cutting away from certain things where I thought he was a better cinematographer director at getting various shots than some of the quick cuts that we get in a lot of, especially inside the Coliseum. I thought there were a lot of really quick cuts that I'm like, okay.
I'm going to agree with your first part. The slow-mo on the battlefield stuff, I don't think it ages as well as I hoped it would have. You know, I mean, even like my fiance would totally agree with you. She, you know, we were 10 minutes in and she's like, "Did you see the sequel?" And I'm like, yeah. She's like, "Did you like it?" I was like, "Yeah, I liked it. It's a little cheesy," but she goes, "This isn't cheesy." I was like, "Oh no, this is going to be a long 2.5 hours." Again, once we got out of the woods with the barbarians, it was she absolutely. I guess, Rob. but it was that slow motion battle, fog of war thing that just didn't land. And it seemed a little 2000s-y. I think this is a pretty well-directed film, though, overall. And I love the stuff, the quick cut stuff, because that gets away from leaning on CGI and leaning on nonsense technology, where it's just, if you're kind of in his POV, that might be what it sort of looks like. It's like this, you got this, you got that, you got, it's a hot action right in your face and on you. And I thought he should have won over Soderbergh for Traffic myself.
I had Connie Nielsen as my best secondary. I think she's entertaining in this. I think she has kind of an unusual role because she's somehow the love interest between both of the primary characters and the balancing character, where early on we get the note from Marcus Aurelius that you would have been a great Caesar if you were a man, giving us that she is a survivor, which we definitely see in the sequel. She is somebody that is very politically savvy and capable of operating at a much higher level, but she's also kind of got to carry part of the plot along. So she's not a damsel in distress either. So it's kind of a layered role that I don't know if the script serves her well enough in the way that she carries this, but I think she does more than what's beyond the page here. Did we get everybody for best secondary?
Yeah, I was going to go with Crowe for mine. Technically, he's the primary star, but I think this takes second place to my thoughts on Phoenix and / Commodus. So,
okay.
And Rob, you would have had him win the Oscar, Joaquin Phoenix, for this.
Oh
yeah, I would agree with that too. Yeah, over that was also Traffic. I forget his name.
Benicio. So Gladiator won picture director for Soderbergh, Julie Roberts for Aaron Brockovich, Crowe for Gladiator over Bardem, Hanks, Ed
Supporting
Harris.
actress Angelina Jolie that year?
No, Marcia Gay Harden for Pollock.
Okay.
Over Judi Dench, Kate Hudson, McDormand, and Julie Walters for Billy Elliot.
Is that McDormand in Almost Famous?
Correct. A movie we'll be covering later this year.
Great film. Love that one.
So, all right. And yes, Benicio won over Jeff Bridges for The Contender, Willem Dafoe for Shadow of the Vampire, Albert Finney for Eric Brockovich, and Joaquin for Gladiator.
Well, Joaquin should have won that one.
All's well that ends well. He won for Joker. Anyway, I digress. We don't need to cover Joker again on this show. It was bad enough the first time. Most charismatic, I had Russell Crowe for obvious reasons. Again, carries the film. Just sheer star power. He's the leader that you want to line up behind, and everybody's chanting his name along in the theater as well as on screen.
I had Joaquin Phoenix, the guy you love to hate.
Yeah, I'm back on the Joaquin train for that too.
It's almost every performance he's in, you don't like him.
Rob, you went Joaquin also?
Yeah, Joaquin also, because as Dana said, you don't like him. It takes effort to make a character, a tremendous effort, I think, to make a character that people actively hate. You know, especially when there's there's villains and there's heroes, but there's also like positive star power and things like that. Like Joaquin Phoenix is a big name. People liked him, things like that at that point in time. I think it takes a lot of effort to make a character people truly hate.
Yeah, well said. Okay, mine. Here we go, Tom. It's time.
Oh, no.
It's the Proximo Hour.
Here we go. Oliver Reed.
Oliver Reed as Proximo is my most charismatic. This is one of my favorite supporting characters out of any Best Picture winner. Oliver Reed is on an absolute heater in this film. He, of course, dies on set. It's almost like he knew that this was his last moment to Icarus this thing. We've joked on Best Picture Cast about is that he thinks that when he saw the poster Gladiator and he heard the title and he got the script, that his character is the gladiator that they're talking about. That it's, oh, Gladiator, oh, I'm the gladiator. And he plays this whole movie like he's the gladiator in the title. And every time I rewatch this film, I just get excited when he walks on screen, just being like, oh, here comes Oliver Reed thinking he is going to take home the Oscar for Best Lead Actor in Gladiator, and he never disappoints to me. And even with the kind of wonky CGI that they figure out in the end, because he dies while they're filming and they have to do an arc. I think his character was supposed to be the one at the end burying the figures in the Colosseum. So he was supposed to live and be the guy to be like, shadows and dust or wherever he's got to do at the end. And obviously they couldn't film any of that. Daijin Hatsu ends up taking over that spot in the script. So there's that wonky CGI in his death scene and whatnot. But I find him to be such an electric component to this film, and a great British actor with a fun little filmography. Nephew of great director Carol Reed, who directed
The Third Man.
The Third Man, a Best Picture and Best Director winning Oscar winner for Oliver. And so Oliver Reed, Proximo, most charismatic for me. I'm a fanboy.
So a couple of additional pieces that I'd like to add on top of that. One, Richard Harris and Oliver Reed were like best friends. Russell Crowe and Richard Harris got along famously.
Hated
but Oliver Reed detested Russell Crowe.
If you, I just wanted to say, if you listen to there's a director commentary of Crowe and Scott doing it together, like they're watching the film together, like commenting, and you could just tell that Russell Crowe can't stand it. It's just even after the poor man has gone to his grave filming the movie, he just had not a nice thing to say about Oliver Reed, and it just makes me love Ollie all that much more.
2, apparently there was like a $25 million insurance policy that the film had to replace Oliver Reed in the movie, but the crew fought back against it so hard. That's why they used a body double in the final scene where he's killed, because otherwise they would have had to reshoot his entire sequence.
Wow. See, I did not know that. And that is amazing. I love stories like that where the people rise up and say, no, this will be his final performance. He's got to be on this. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, because he died with 3 weeks to go.
Yeah, do you know how he died? Okay, I looked it up, right? He was a renowned alcoholic. And so he made a promise to Ridley Scott that he would not drink while they were filming.
Oh, no.
Okay? And so he, of course, was on the wagon. They had a break-in shooting for a long weekend. He went into town and ran into a whole group of British sailors who recognized him and challenged him to a drinking competition. And he, of course, outdrank all the sailors combined. Ended up passing out and having a heart attack from the amount of alcohol in his system. And he died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
I got to give somebody who does that a Wisconsin salute.
And I should say that there is some contesting of how much of that is lore, and that's the only reason I'm smiling, because it's obviously not funny at all.
Right, yeah.
Of course, but there is some lore to it, how much of it is and how much is. But that is the story that Dana told. That is the legend of Oliver Reed's final night on set. But he does go out big with this film, and salute to the great Oliver Reed. Shadows and Dust.
Let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here, and we can add on after that. I have Conquering Germania. I have Commodus and Aurelius. So that would be the showdown, I guess, between the two of them when he ends up killing his father. Then I have the Battle of Carthage, and not to be confused here, that's the first sequence in the Colosseum. Then I have Tigris of Gaul, and I have the final confrontation, which is the final sword fight between Commodus and Maximus. I know I'm obviously condensing the film down to those 5 moments. It's 2.5 hours. What did I miss?
All the extended footage in the 3-hour version.
There's an extended version? I didn't know this.
Yeah,
oh my
3-hour version. Yeah, they
Can't
really get
order
into
the
politics. They get into the politics and all that stuff. So.
No, I was going to say, I think that one of my favorite scenes is when they first get to when Maximus is first a gladiator and he's fighting for Proximo the first time, and they're in kind of the minor league stadium, if you will, the minor league Coliseum, and that's just such a delightfully spectacle fighter, AAA video game of a scene. So much shit happens in that scene, that you've got Ralph Mahler's character, lopping off the arm of the dude that he's tied to and using it like a flail Like there's so many things that are going on in that sand coliseum, if you will, that are just bonkers. You know, it's such a great introduction to the violence, the bloodiness that was Rome, and that was saying, hey man, we're having a game today, next week on Fox, watch lions eat Christians, you know.
How very Nero of you. Anyway, any other scenes to add?
I may add them as we do the categories, but I think that's all pretty good.
Okay. Out of these 6 then, Conquering Germania, Commodus and Aurelius, First Gladiator Fight, Battle of Carthage, Tigris of Gaul, and Final Confrontation, what is the best scene? I know, I'm asking Rob to do a Sophie's Choice here.
I'll go first for me. Watching it last night, I just let it wash over me, and it helped watching it with the first-time viewer. And to me, it was pretty clear as the best scene. And I'll let the Gmote listener litigate if I'm cheating here and marrying some things. But to me, it's the chariot fight into the father of a murdered son, husband of a murdered wife speech into, and I will have my revenge. Like that is like, that section of the movie is just mint. It's untouchable. It's fire. So to me, the chariot into the speech. If I have to pick between the two, to me, it's probably the confrontation between the Commodus and Maximus. But I'd like to group that together because it's just in itself is just amazing.
I'll allow it because I also have the same sequence. Basically, I didn't intend to necessarily include the speech, but I'm not against it either. But I think that the Battle of Carthage specifically is the best scene in the movie because it's Crowe on an absolute heater as the leader. When you're thinking about him in this movie and how he is born to be the leader, you're thinking about this scene where he's organizing a bunch of just random slaves and gladiators into a army almost to take down the heavily favored guys with all of the advantages. And he pulls it off. They are supposed to be fodder, and yet they almost universally survive. I just think it's a great scene of what his character is supposed to be. It's some of the best character development for me throughout the entire film. So we have 2 for the same scene.
I'll concur on that. I really do. I think it's the most emotionally charged. I think it's the one scene that has the most impact on the movie itself. So yeah, I'll concur on that.
Going to be Minority Report here. I'm going with Conquering Germania. That is an 11-minute roller coaster ride. I mean, it's all set to a single track of music in the soundtrack. It's like 11 minutes and 52 seconds long or something like that. It is so well scored, and it is so continuously exciting. Again, kind of like a roller coaster. You know, you do have those up the hills and down the hills and things like that. They burned down a whole forest for it. They made special machines that shot tens of thousands of arrows in, you know, rapid fire. And it just, I think it was a great way for the average American, if you will, or person, you know, living in the modern world to realize, like, damn, war really sucks, especially when you're doing it hand to hand and trudging through, you know, pre-medieval Europe in the mud and everything like that, and how we're basically just a bunch of monkeys on a ball and we kill each other a lot. And I think that's a really interesting scene to open on, of like, wow, you know, this all looks really organized, but at the end of the day, it is, you know, it's knife work, and knife work is always messy, and that's I think is what makes it the best scene, between the visuals, the musical, and you do get some character development there too of who Maximus is. You know, he's leading the cavalry in a flanking maneuver, and that sets the stage for this guy is at the peak of his career, and here's Rome.
That's really well said, Rob. And I don't want it, because of my reporting for my companion, I don't want it to come off like I don't love the start of this movie. I think this movie starts hot and starts amazing. Like it everything you said, I'm on board with. That's
right.
Awesome.
But for somebody like her, not that I want to put words in her mouth or anything like that, but like, she might have just thought it was some sort of meathead kind of like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of guys gonna die in the opening scene, blah 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 blah. But like, I can see why that was maybe initially kind of a tough sell.
Yeah, it's just you don't know if you're in the right hands as a first time viewer. It's
Correct.
just and we're injected into our veins, but there's a very Saving Private Ryan of that in it too, where
Yes.
starting hot for the same stuff you're talking about is like spinning around on the ball and constantly fighting each other. It's yeah, all that was really well said.
Favorite scene for me, I'm going to go Tigress of Gaul. I think it's some of the best camera work in the entire movie because there's some really good long shots of the battle sequences or the fight sequence between the two of them. And I don't know if it was just because of the choreography that they had to cut away and do so many quick cuts that maybe annoyed me during some of the other stuff. But I think in this particular sequence where it's just mano a mano, I really enjoyed kind of the back and forth of it. And by the end of it, him defying the Emperor, it's just another fuck you that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that scene's actually pretty cool too, because I mean, Tigress comes out of retirement and stuff like that, and I did a little bit of looking at like who that guy is, and the dude's a monster. Dude's like 6'6". Like, I'm a big dude. He's a person that makes me look little, and it's like, okay,
The actor,
yeah, absolutely wild.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of Arnold movies. I think he's been in Arnold's. Just like brings him along. I think they were old lifting partners. So if you look at his filmography, he's in like 11 Schwarzenegger films. Tom, that was your favorite?
Yes.
Scene? So my favorite is going to be attached to my best. It's, Tom, you alluded to it a little bit about how big of an upset this Battle of Carthage is. And for me, it's going back to my guy Proximo, him coming into the stadium being like, all right, so here are my like best, like these are, one can imagine some of the best prospects he's had. And he's bringing them in and they're like, well, you're going to go to slaughter at Carthage. And he's like, come, what he's like, really? And he does it very professionally, but you can sense the heartbreak in that, and not to really associate the too much compassion and humanity with a slave owner. I'm not going there, but like there is an element of like, oh God, I really have some high hopes for this as a gladiator himself and coming through this. And when it goes down, and this is going to be a bizarre sports analogy, but it's kind of like in a March Madness situation. I want to go back to, do you remember when John Morant was on Murray State?
Yep.
And they were just like cast away as like a 15 seed or a 14 seed. They're like, yeah, but just throw them in there against one of the mid majors. And they just slaughtered the competition. Murray State just barreling through I think they
I
went as
remember
far
it
as
very well because they beat up on Marquette and I enjoyed that thoroughly.
And I think did they go to the Final Four? I mean,
no. They lost like in the second round, I think. But yeah, that first game they absolutely destroyed Marquette.
They didn't go further, or right?
I don't
think so.
so.
Where they won the championship. That's what it felt like. It was like, okay, like all bets are off. This thing's burning through. But there's this one shot of relief that they cut to with Proximo where he's like, I thought my boys were done. And now like there's a relief to what, like, my belief in them really, really mattered that much more. But I love that sequence just leading up to it. I thought it was a nice director's touch.
Well, I had Conquering Germania for my favorite scene because I think it really dictated or told you exactly who Maximus was. And I think it set the tone for him as what he was capable of doing, both leading and fighting. And I thought the whole thing was beautifully shot.
Most indelible moment on this one, for me, it's always the final confrontation, just because of how the movie ends. You're very familiar with the progression of the story, but what lasts with me is Maximus gets Commodus in the end.
I thought it was in the throat.
Where's the soundboard? Come on.
Are you not entertained?
It's good.
And that would be mine. I tend to go with the gifable moment there to transition. And are you not entertained, to me, is the thing that endures here in this. It will gif on and echo in eternity.
That's funny because that's literally where, again, like I said, I quoted that line for my high school yearbook, which is, again, very kind of cringe looking back at it, 21 years on now. But at the same time, there are the most indelible moment. It is a thing. What you do while you have time on this planet does have an impact, and that's, I even look at that with, being in business and things like that. I tell people my business is my broadsword. My business is my broadsword to fight the great evils of this world. I may not be able to do them planet wide, but I can sure as hell fight them in my little town here. And my business is my broadsword to do that. So I'm a big fan of that, because what you do here makes the world a better place for the people who are still here when you leave it.
Hell yeah.
Well, I don't know if I could have a better point to stop for our second break. We'll be right back. I was just looking around your shelf.
Oh, yeah.
What was being displayed.
If you have any questions, let me know.
I'm assuming those are X-Files up to your right.
Here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got VHSs of this is the movie, and then there's just this season.
And I think
episodes.
that's Stephen King books. 1001 movies.
Most of my books are Stephen King. I'm a collector of that. I'm not a huge collector of much else as far as the book world goes. I got Dracula, Bram Stoker here. We're, of course, celebrating Gladiator here.
What's the top shelf to your left, or on the far left there?
Dr. Zhivago?
No, just below that.
Oh, yes. Okay. This is what I was wondering if you'd spot. This is a VHS of The Revenger starring Oliver Reed, our very own. And this will be the next Worst Picture Cast episode. I told them that, as for any future Worst Picture Cast episodes, I will find the VHS somewhere and get it. So I got that. And whenever that relaunches, that will be what it is. So that's a deep track little Easter egg in the back. So good job.
I like that. I looked at it earlier and I'm like, the Ravager?
Yeah. And if you lean over here, this would be my last episode.
Yep, I did notice that one.
Yes.
I'm not sure what's next to Vertigo, but oh well.
Dr. Zhivago, Bridge on the River Kwai, Vertigo.
Oh, Bridge on the River. Okay. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 234 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Mac Gaiden, 83, American singer and songwriter. Songs include Everlasting Love, My Rainbow Valley. Patrick Iriarte, 82, Filipino American actor. Appeared in The King and I, High Time, Flower Drum Song. Sophie Nwidi, 24, American actress. Appeared in Bella, Noah, An Invisible Sign.
24 is too young.
Yeah. Jean Marsh, 90, English actress and television writer. Appeared in Upstairs, Downstairs, was also a writer on the show. Doctor Who and Willow. Was an Emmy winner in 1975. Don Mesher, 85, American television producer. Produced multiple Super Bowls, Olympics, Emmys, Oscar telecasts, and TV specials.
So I don't have any particular relationship with really any of these people, to be quite honest. I've heard the song Everlasting Love. I think most people have at one time or another, or anybody who's watched Happy Gilmore. So there's that. But Dad, Patrick Iriarte, apparently was a guest star, I think a multiple-time guest star on MASH.
In the first season, he played Ho-John, the houseboy.
I see. Given that I've never actually gone through and watched the entire show, I don't have that familiarity. And so we remember these here fondly for their contributions to the arts with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's make the terrible transition to best funniest lines. I'll take the obvious one. Are you not entertained?
Spaniard, Spaniard, Spaniard.
It vexes me. I'm terribly vexed.
Commodus.
No. You gotta wait.
I've always enjoyed, at my signal, unleash hell.
Maximus, removing his helmet and turning around to face Commodus. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions and loyal servant to the true Emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Commodus, the general who became a slave, the slave who became a gladiator, the gladiator who defied an emperor. Striking story, but now the people want to know how the story ends. Only a famous death will do. And what could be more glorious than to challenge the emperor himself in the great arena? Maximus, you would fight me? Commodus, why not? Do you think I'm afraid? Maximus, I think you've been afraid your whole life.
Maximus, 3 weeks from now, I will be harvesting my crops. Imagine where you will be, and it will be so. Hold the line. Stay with me. If you find yourself alone or riding in the green fields with the sun on your face, do not be troubled, for you are in Elysium, and you are already dead. Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
People should know when they're conquered. Would you, Quintus? Would I?
Maximus, I knew a man once who said, death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
Lucilla, today I saw a slave become more powerful than the emperor of Rome.
Maximus, the frost, it sometimes makes the blade stick.
Marcus Aurelius to Maximus. When was the last time you were home? Maximus, 2 years, 264 days, and this morning.
Maximus, strength and honor.
Maximus, nothing happens to anyone that he is not fitted by nature to bear.
Commodus, he sleeps so well because he is loved.
Proximo. You sold me queer giraffes.
Arguably the line, arguably the line of the movie, and what a wonderful delivery, by the way. Crush that.
I'm going to decline to do some accent work on this one because it's the Juba character. You have a great name. He must kill your name before he kills you.
I'm out.
Proximo, he knows too well how to manipulate the mob. Maximus, Marcus Aurelius had a dream that was Rome. Proximo, that is not it. That is not it. Proximo, Marcus Aurelius is dead, Maximus. We mortals are but shadows and dust. Shadows and dust, Maximus.
You got any left, Rob?
Good. I'm gonna ride out on that Proximo quote and pull the rug out from Kieran a little bit there.
All right, I got a couple left. Proximo.
I have a lot left. I guess I'll trim.
No,
them
it's
down,
all right.
Sorry.
Proximo. Listen to me. Learn from me. I was not the best because I killed quickly. I was the best because the crowd loved me. Win the crowd, and you will win your freedom.
Gracchus, the beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate. It's the sand of the Colosseum. He'll bring them death, and they'll love him for it.
And my last one, Proximo. Ultimately, we're all dead men. Sadly, we cannot choose how, but what we can decide is how we meet that end, in order that we are remembered as men.
Proximo, so Spaniard, we shall go to Rome together and have bloody adventures. And the great whore will suckle us until we are fat and happy and we can suckle no more. And then, when enough men have died, perhaps you will have your freedom. I have to do, I have two more Proximos I got to do. Sorry here. Maximus says, I'm required to kill, so I kill. That is enough. Proximo, in one of the most insane monologues in the entire movie. That's enough for the provinces, but not for Rome. The young emperor has arranged a series of spectacles to commemorate his father, Marcus Aurelius. I find that amusing, since Marcus Aurelius the Wise, the all-knowing Marcus Aurelius, that closed us down. So finally, after 5 years of scratching a living in a flea-infested villages, we are finally going back to where we belong, the Colosseum. You should see the Colosseum, Spaniard. 50,000 Romans watching every movement of your sword, willing to make that killing blow. The silence before you strike and the noise afterwards, it rises up like a storm, as you were the thunder god himself. And then finally, Proximo. Some of you are thinking that you won't fight. Others, that you can't fight. They all say that until they're out there. And Tom, I'm sorry, but did you get Juba? No, you didn't. Okay. I'll end on this one because that's how the movie ends. Juba. And now we are free. I will see you again, but not yet. Not yet.
All right. Let's move to the Stanley rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out. So 2005 to today. What is the legacy of this film? We split this category 5 and 5 points as shared between the audience at large and the industry. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
Since I'm a newbie, I'll go second.
All right. I think that the industry is kind of forced by the sequel to honor and respect this more, but I think this is more of an audience film at this point. I think the industry kind of gives this a little bit of a nod and shrug, but it's not like an important or highly publicized Oscar Best Picture winner unless it's brought up by the audience. This is one that the general people remember because it was widely popular. It's still very popular among men, particularly. And so it's constantly in their rewatches. But if you're going to ask the average industry person, I don't think that this is going to end up on any great critics list. I mean, we mentioned a couple of tangential ones that had kind of ranked it, but the AFI has completely forgotten this, more or less, even though they stopped doing lists only 8 years after this came out. And this isn't going to appear in any Sight and Sound poll anytime soon. I don't know that if it weren't for the sequel, that this is something that anybody would feel is a great property or commodity to try and capitalize on. There wasn't a huge fervor for a sequel, especially because of the way the movie ends. The character that carries the movie, at least for me, dies. And it feels natural and deserving, and I think that's the way the movie should have ended. So then how we got a sequel, I'm not still quite sure, and frankly, the plot of the second movie makes that compellingly clear. But there
was a plot?
Well, there was an attempt at a plot. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go with a 4 on the industry, but I'll go with a 4.5 on the audience. I don't think this movie is for a completely broad spectrum of people, but I think that there are enough people that have seen it. It is still somewhat fresh, even 25 years later, for most people to have at least some type of name recognition and association, know who was kind of in the movie, that it still lives in the consciousness. So it's not at a 5 because, again, I think that this doesn't appeal to everybody, but I think it's in that next tier at a 4.5. So I have an 8.5.
I have different reasons for coming out, at least as far as the industry, to the same point as you, Tom. I think that this film allowed Ridley Scott to make a series of blockbuster bombs at times over the next decade, in large part because he had this success and this amount of money that he generated from his films. So I think that's part of that. So I'm at a 4 for also the same reasons you've indicated. I don't know how much this resonates with the public in general. When we did our informal poll among the staff, about half had seen it, I think is what we came up with, or a third.
Half of them knew what the movie was.
I think a third of them had seen it. So I'm at a 4 for the public. So I'm at an 8 overall. There's a large spectrum of people who just haven't watched it. And I think primarily women do not tend to migrate towards it. I think older people have not necessarily because of the violence in it. So I think 4 is being generous.
So you're in an 8?
Yep.
Okay. So which of you two gentlemen would like to be on the chopping block next?
I think I'll jump on that, Tom. This movie is, I think, highly influential in certain demographics. I think that for the industry, we asked earlier in this movie, did this spawn 300? And I think somewhat, yes, it did. I think it obviously didn't give, it's a fictional story set in, an ancient time. And yes, the Battle of Thermopylae and things like that. That's an actual true story. There weren't just 300 guys there and whatnot. But like looking at what the industry needs to respect of that is like, okay, hey man, like historical-ish period piece, again, it's a fictional story set historically, can do very well and can be very impactful, again, especially amongst certain demographics. So I think they kind of had to respect things from at about a 4 there in the industry because other stuff started to come along. But then also, to echo Dana's point, I think I'm going to go with it an 8 overall as well, because I think this was very influential for certain demographics, not for everybody. It's not this widespread, like maybe Jurassic Park is a good example of this or something like that, of like, wow, everybody, like the dinosaur movie, everybody knows, like, whoa, this was, but for, the demographic that I was in, that maybe Kieran was in, highly influential. And again, we talked earlier in the show about how this missed your demo, Tom, by just a handful of years. I mean, we're only 4 years apart. This was not influential to you necessarily in that formative time of being a teen and going like Gladiator, Gladiator, Gladiator. Again, I have a friend who has a son named Maximus. That's pretty damn influential. Now, granted, there are kids out there named Khaleesi, but
I guess one of the points that I hadn't considered that you kind of have brought up there is the influence. And usually if there's something successful that is capitalizing on something, that there will be plenty in Hollywood. It's a very copycat industry.
Yes.
Nobody did a similar movie that did as well. We had Alexander, we had Troy, we had a couple of other like swords and sandals type movies. Even Ridley Scott tried to circle back around with it on Kingdom of Heaven, which,
yes,
if you watch the extended cut like I did last year, I actually don't think it's a bad movie. I think he tries, but it's not quite as impactful as this one because it doesn't have a central story that I think has a beginning, middle, and an end that's clear. So it's a little bit more meandering, but I don't think it's a poorly made movie. It's still entertaining. But because there was never the secondary one that kind of inherited it and then kind of carried on this nature, I don't know how influential I would place that.
Isn't the influence in the funding of these films, though? Like, the return may not be there, but I mean, I guess now we're talking impact and significance then with those. So like, but I'm saying it's like, well, none of those films are successful. Yeah, but those are all super expensive films. And the reason that they were funded was because of Gladiator. And I think that like Troy made money. I might be speaking out of pocket that maybe he didn't. Might have lost a shit ton of money for all I know. I liked it, but I don't know. Rob, did you give your final numbers?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I'm going to echo you guys with industry. I kind of don't disagree much with what you're saying.
I think you're right that we probably reserve that for impact and significance given how the proximity of it is. So you're probably right there.
But I like the 4. This isn't like looked at in prestige from the industry. It definitely built some careers and such. So I give it a little love of that, but I can't go much higher than a 4. I'm a little surprised about this on the next one. How is this not a 5 for audience? I mean, 25 years later, they randomly came out with a sequel that doesn't have the lead in it. And it's a massive blockbuster hit, whether you liked the movie or not. How is that not as significant as it gets? I mean, there's no like Lost in Translation 2, 25 later, starring Gal Gadot and Denzel Washington.
God.
Like,
oh,
like, I mean, like, this is a massive, massive hit that they like. It's bizarre that Gladiator 2 exists, but it only exists because of the relevancy of the property. We just went on earlier in the episode about IP and all this and that, like, and even Top Gun Maverick, like, that's playing off a bit of the Mission Impossible and the Tom Cruise of it all. Like, there was some momentum. People didn't just go to that because of their passion for Top Gun. It was because there was this momentum of, hey, you know, like, they're really flying these planes, and there's Tom Cruise and it's the stunts and all that stuff. Like, Gladiator is just like a random movie from 2000 that, yes, of course, it won Best Picture and Best Actor and Russell Crowe and all that, but it resonates today. How is it not a 5? I mean, it is a massive blockbuster success in 2024. That's kind of insane that that's even a reality. So I have a 9.
I'm going to push back.
I think it'll even out over time in the overall scoring. But again, I'll return because I gave it a 4.5. I was the highest on the audience of the non-fivers. And my point is I just don't think it's quite as broadly appealing to everybody, and thus why I would just take that half step down. I think it's an important movie to the audience, and I do think it has cultural cachet, but I don't know if it's quite as broadly appealing as even Top Gun, where I think that even was influential on women at the time.
Right, and I'm going to jump on that too, Tom, is that I think this particular movie, we saw the box office smash of 2024 with the sequel, which I went to see, and I didn't necessarily drag my other half there. We kind of dragged each other because we both like the original, but I don't think that that's necessarily the dynamic in most relationships. I think that it's 25 years later. The guys who saw it at age 15 are now pushing 40, and they're like, hey, honey, let's have a date night. I want to go see Gladiator. And I think you get that sort of that dragged along demographic that came with that couldn't give a shit less because they wanted to watch The Notebook when they were 15 years ago, 20 or 15 years old, 25 years ago. And so I think it is the influence of one demographic on another that drives that success. But it is highly significant to a portion, and I think that bleeds onto other demos, whether they actually love the movie or not.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like Tom, like you said, we'll see how that ages. But that money's in the bank, and that box office is there. And I just don't know that you've ever had it as tangible of a legacy as this is. Like, randomly 25 years later, there's a sequel. No comic books, no IP, like, it's just a movie. 25 years pass, a sequel's a blockbuster hit. It's a very unique instance, but I think it deserves a 5 for audience for me. That's my stance there.
I would be curious to see how many people watch Gladiator 2 that never had seen Gladiator 1.
That's a good question.
I don't think there's going to be a ton of people
I don't agree.
that see Gladiator 2 without having seen Gladiator.
I think the whole shit ton of high school, college kids went and saw it. Yeah.
But no. I'm saying that hadn't seen the original.
Yeah. Yeah, because they weren't born when the original came out. I mean, my point is the box office numbers are so huge that it wasn't just salty old Limp Bizkit fans like me and Rob going out to see the film. Like, it's made a lot of money.
All right, just for the sake of it, it didn't quite get to $500 million in the global box office. So, I mean, it made a lot of money, but, like, let's not also make it that it was Oppenheimer or Barbie.
But what was it like? What was it ranked last year?
All right.
And if you take out kids' films, what was it ranked? Because let's just like let's not do the.
What do you define as kids films? Because I mean, 3 of
animated. Come on, all right, come on.
Okay, well, I'm saying, like, to some, I know Deadpool and Wolverine is rated R, but there were a lot.
No, that would not be a kids film. That would not be. Okay, I'm talking about movies that you're babysitting your kids on a Sunday afternoon. The unicorns and the dragons and the.
Okay, Gladiator was 12th worldwide last year, but the rest of them are all like IP or sequels of some kind. Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, Wicked, Mufasa the Lion King, Dune Part 2, Godzilla vs. Kong, The New Empire, Kung Fu Panda 4, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Venom the Last Dance, then Gladiator 2.
A lot of
then you had Beetlejuice just after it.
Wow, so it beat Beetlejuice. I'll talk about another. See, those are comparable entities there.
Yeah.
Sequels many years later. Obviously, when I'm talking about kids' movies, I'm talking about the animateds, the ones that parents are trying to get their kids out of the sun. They're trying to get their kids out of the hair.
Okay, so if you're doing that, you could probably take out Wicked, Mufasa.
I'll allow
Despicable
Wicked.
Me.
Wicked can stay. Wicked can stay.
All right, so if you're doing that, you're taking out Inside Out 2, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, Mufasa, Kung Fu Panda 4, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Yes, get rid of them.
So that's like 6 out of 12. So it's like 6 among the adult movies, I guess.
So it was the 6th highest grossing film of the year, basically for its targeted demographic. That's pretty significant. That's just my point. That's pretty significant.
I'm not saying that it didn't make money. $500 million in this climate is not bad. But also, like, let's also not make it that it was Top Gun Maverick either, which is a completely different entity. Like, I think that's over here, and then Gladiator 2 is like here, with a grouping of other like legacy.
But my point about
types.
Top Gun Maverick is that had less to do about the actual Top Gun and more to do about Tom Cruise and the stunts. But yeah, we're getting each other.
Okay, we can move on though, but just to average this out, we had an 8.38 for Legacy. Anyway, impact and significance. I'm going to let Kieran lead off here since he's kind of been dabbling already in that field.
Yeah,
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I should explain impact and significance. I forget to do that. And for anybody who's just coming to the show, I need to remind myself to constantly remind everybody what these categories are, as if they haven't listened to 90 episodes.
Good man.
If you are, and you have listened to 90 episodes, thank you. But for the people that this is like your first, second, or even fifth, impact and significance is a measure of the impact and significance of the film within the first 5 years after it came out. So roughly 2000 to 2005. What is the impact and significance of the film as shared between the audience and the industry? Like the last category, we split this category between those two groups for 5 and 5 points for a total of 10. Thank you. And now, Kieran, you may resume.
Yes. For industry impact and significance within the 5-year gap, it is a 5. It won Best Picture. It won Best Actor. It started the funding for all of these sword and sandal films that would come for years to come. You mentioned them all before. This reinvigorated a subgenre of film that really hadn't been dabbled with successfully since the 50s, 60s. You can litigate that inside if you'd like. Yeah. To me, it's an easy 5. It checks all the award stuff. It checks all what people funded for the next couple of years. It's an easy 5. Audience, again, I will go with a 5. It was all the rage. It did it in the box office. It made people care about a mathematician with schizophrenia a year later and made that a blockbuster in A Beautiful Mind. Russell Crowe was like People Magazine most beautiful person. This was a massive, massive hit at the time. I get the splitting hairs about what it looks like 25 years later, but to me, this is an undeniable 10 within this 5-year gap.
All right, I'm weighing things yet. I'm gonna sit on my own score. So, Rob, are you okay with going second?
Yeah, I think I want to echo a lot of what Kieran said, as I think, yes, the sword's like, hey, man, we got like 50 versions of whatever historical piece. I mean, like, I think it was Clash of the Titans in there and all sorts of stuff like that. I think that was all that very same stuff. And that was big budget shit. I mean, even though I really didn't like that movie, but it was really big budget stuff. I think the impact on the industry is definitely 5, because we got oodles of historical
Beowulf.
pieces. Yeah, Beowulf was in there. Yeah, like, wow, I forgot about that one. Thank you for that little walk down memory lane.
Yeah.
And then significance, I think I'm just shaved just a little bit off of this, because again, the audience demo, I think this was like, you know, we have 5 points to give. For some demos, this was like an 8 significance. For others, it was like a 2. So it's one of those things that I don't want to average that out to 5 necessarily, but like, I think I'm going to drop it a point or a half a point off of the 5 there, just because it was seemed to be so focused, and the this, not sequels, but the spawn of Gladiator, the Troy, I remember every one of my female friends in high school being like, Brad Pitt is so dreamy and Troy. Like I think that came a little bit afterwards. But
don't, Rob, just
go ahead.
Just a quick response. I mean, don't you remember Russell Crowe? I mean, he was like the sexiest person in the world. Like women were freaking out over his performance here with this. Like he was People Magazine's most sexiest person. Like it was.
You do make a good point, because all I can think about is the South Park episode. Oh my God, it's Russell Crowe! Oh my God, Russell Crowe! So yeah, you do have a point.
And we have to mention that. Okay, you have Braveheart. So Braveheart was like the kindling for this whole stuff. So
right,
you can't just say like they're the first person to do it. But this was the blue flame that took it off. And I think that
you've convinced me, sir. I think you do have a point there, because and that was something I didn't consider, was that yes, even looking at the South Park thing, like, because that's literally what was happening. You're right. Oh my God, it's Russell Crowe, and people were freaking out about that. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a perfect 10 on this.
I'm still sitting on the fence trying to debate it here. So, Dad, I guess I'm filibustering myself for a second.
Do you need some privacy?
I was going to make a filibuster and nut kind of joke or something like that.
For me, okay. Yes, it won Best Picture. It won Best Actor. It did not win a ton of other awards. Yes, it also impacted that. So,
okay, but you also made an argument a couple of weeks ago. How many films have been nominated for 12 Oscars? The list is very short.
I know. So I will go up from my original 4.5 on the industry to 5. But on the public, I think it was more of a guy's picture, except it did help to have Beefcake and Russell Crowe in it. I've mentioned this a couple of times to some people I know. And of course, the women immediately go, oh, yes, Russell Crowe. So I understand that. I mean, 25 years later, they're still talking about it. But I've got to go with a 4.5 for the public. So I'm at a 9.5. And I'm solid. You can't convince me of anything else.
Tom, before you go, I want to remind you about your nugget about the soundtrack being the highest selling of its time, too. So people were listening to the music after they saw the movie.
And you're working hard. I appreciate the hustle. Originally, I had this as a 4.5 and a 4.5 for a 9. Partly because it got a divided awards haul. And the critical reviews, even now, are still kind of like, it's one of the lower rated critically Best Picture winners of recent memory. But that being said, I think you've made enough points to move me from a 4.5 to a 5 on the industry. The question is can I fully move from a 4.5 to a 5? Now, knowing and trying to think through what are the 10s in impact and significance. When we visit Star Wars next week, I can already tell you that's going to be a 10.
But that's not a debate, 10. Though.
But Jaws is a 10. The Godfather is a 10 in impact and significance. The Sound of Music, Gone with the Wind. Those are like the clearly obvious impact and significant 10s. Where I'm struggling a little bit is that even though this was a big movie in the moment and was clearly something that tried to be copied, can I say it's on par with some of the rest of those that it just was so culturally pervasive? The impact of Star Wars, or even the impact of Indiana Jones, I think we also had like a 10 at the time, just because of how much that movie ran for like 2 years straight as being like the number one thing at the box office until E.T. I'm just not sure I'm ready to go there for a film that finished number 2 in its own year. And I don't think 4.5 on an audience, even as wide-reaching as it was, is necessarily a knock. It's just saying it's not Jaws. It's not Star Wars. And I don't think that's necessarily a step down. I just think it's saying it was important, but we got to also appreciate it within the larger context. So I guess I'm going to stay at a 9.52. So that should be What?
9.75.
Yeah, I think so. So that is a 9.75 average between the four of us. Which, if you're going to get something for our scoring purposes, that's about as good as you're going to get without getting a 10. All right, let's move to novelty. Dad, I'm going to let you lead off here, but quickly, just to define the category, this is a measure of the novelty of the film as divided between two different characteristics, the originality of anything having to do with the movie, as well as the execution overall by the entire production, top to bottom. We split this category 5 and 5 points for a total of 10. Go ahead, Dad.
Ben-Hur, Spartacus. It's not novel.
I think you're going to get a lot of argument there, but okay, you want to expand on that?
I mean, it's not like it's something that was completely unique to the circumstance or to the film genre. I mean, it had been done before. It was packaged better. In the originality, it's probably about a 2.5 out of 5. Execution, I'll give it a 4. So I'll go with a 6.5 because the battle scenes were by themselves. The execution of them and the intricacy involved did put shame to a lot of the other Roman ancient history films as far as, the amount of technology involved and all of that. So the execution was a lot higher, but the originality, I didn't think it was that original. I mean, it was packaged better and done better than some of them, but so I'm at a 6.5.
I'd like to go next if I could.
That's a brutal.
All right,
opening,
fine.
But go ahead.
Just because
I'll let you go.
I'm basically just going to second everything that Dana said. I'm in full agreement with him. I don't think it's original and novel at all. It is Spartacus and Ben-Hur repackaged. Ridley Scott went to a garage sale or an old thrift shop and found an old lamp and rubbed it and came up with something really fantastic. But the execution is what makes this film great to me. Dana, you were at a 2.5 and a 4.
Yes.
I'm gonna be a little higher in the execution because of he took an old package and revision. I'll just go 0.5 up. So I'll go 2.5 and a 4.5.
The only reason I didn't go up to a 4.5 is because really I think the script is really weak.
And you brought up the battle scenes, but this is kind of like the end of an era with these battle scenes, and it reinvigorated the last gasp of it. So 2.5 and a 4.5 for someone do the math for me. 7?
Cool. 7.
All right. I'm just going to make my entry here and let it fall. If I'm going to argue, and I think this is actually a little bit more novel than both of you, that's not where I'm going to lose the points. I ultimately end pretty much where both of you are at. But I would say that the Sword and Sandal movie was dead for multiple decades. It was just completely gone. Nobody made them. We're talking that it went from Spartacus in 1960 until 2000, basically, before we got this. And then after that, you have Exodus, Gods of War, you have 300, we talked about Troy, Alexander, all these other knockoffs and rewrites and ancient civilization battle sequence movies, none of which live up to what is Gladiator, of course. But I think you got to give it some credit for bringing back an old concept. It would be the equivalent of doing a film noir in 2025 that's like a true Sam Spade throwback detective and winning Best Picture. That's just not something that we're considering. Sometimes just because something happened before does not mean it's ill novel. I only have it at a 3.5, but I do think we have to give credit for reinvigorating a genre more often, or at least the other half of this show needs to give more credit to that.
But isn't that the split of the category, right? Like the execution of it. Like we didn't invent anything, but we found something and we made it something else. So
that's a fair argument, I suppose, in the definitions. I tend to exercise more the execution on a basis of how well is the movie made. And to me, there are enough things where I look at it and it definitely makes you feel something. Like, I dare too many people to watch Gladiator and not be kind of like elated at the end of the movie. They had the 100 Years, 100 Cheers for AFI. It was like in 2003. I have no idea why this is not on that list. Because at the end of the movie, you're like, fuck yeah, let's go out and, I don't know, sword and beat whatever.
Well, I cried again. So,
Are you going back to having this private moment here or what?
No comment. Anyway, moving on. Execution for me, I think the acting is really good. I think that there are a lot of good quotable lines, but there just seems to be a little bit in the explanation, the crispness, the cohesion of the story. It goes from point A to point B very quickly in some of these sequences. Like, the more often you watch this movie, from where Maximus is supposed to escape and they basically arrest Gracchus, up and through the end where we get to the final fight, more or less, and right before that where he stabs him, I just don't know if there's like enough cohesion to follow everything that's going on. There's so much happening all at once, and it feels too quick for a 2.5 hour movie. I don't know if that's like cleared up a little bit better in the extended version or not, having not seen that, but it just feels a little abrupt. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So there are some directorial choices. Again, the slow-mo has not particularly aged well. I don't think, when it came out in 2000, I think that would have been seen as very novel at the time that it was done. But now in hindsight, and maybe that's a classicness thing, but ultimately I came out at a 3.5 there, and I'm at a 7.
Okay, I'm gonna probably put this a little bit higher, and I would push back on Dana, you and Kieran both with the novelty thing. We talked about Spartacus being 1960-ish. I fished around in my brain before I got my turn to talk here, and I'm like, I cannot think of a ancient history movie. I'm sure there were some between the 60s or the early 60s and the 2000s.
There's
at all.
One major example, and Conan the Barbarian.
Okay, so but that's a fantasy too. That's got a little bit of magic and shit like that in that too. But like this like historical type piece, I think it is more novel than you guys are giving it credit for, because it hadn't been seen in 2 generations, basically. It was something that, was Spartacus, Cleopatra, all of these, big budget, lots of extra movies, 50s, 60s. They were a thing that just wasn't made anymore. And to see this kind of revived, revamped, I think that gives a little bit more novelty than you guys are giving it credit for. So I'm going to give that a 3.5 on the first part of that, of like, this hasn't been around for a long time. So for the vast majority of people, especially people who were in their, who were underneath the age of 40, maybe even 60, because they were, they were kids in the 50s and 60s at that time, 40s and 50s, excuse me. Not doing math right there, but I think a lot of the audience this was never something they'd never seen before, because they were not even thought of before Spartacus or things like that were out there. The other part of it, I think I want to give a 4.5 on the production kind of value of, yes, I agree completely. The script is, if there is a flaw in the armor here, it is that yes, Tom, you mentioned some of these things do kind of move a little fast for a 2.5 hour movie. It's like, but like, we have a bridging scene there, things like that. But I do think that it was repackaged really well. Yes, extended edition, I know I have to watch it, but I think it was packaged really well, because it was that new, that, hey, this is this old thing and we've totally given it a facelift. It's totally something you've never seen before, 80% or 70% of moviegoers, and it's really well done. And the thing that I really that sets this up for me here is, not only did we get the Sword and Sandals revival and, all the extra, child movies of Gladiator, you can hear, even from the musical production, you can hear Hans Zimmer in Pirates of the Caribbean, in all of these other things that came out after that. And I would argue that movies like Pirates of the Caribbean are akin to Sword and Sandals types of movies, because they are historical fiction generally. Again, there's a fantastical element to Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one at least. Well, it's way bigger in the other ones, but like the first one does have that little sprinkle of magic, if you will. And I really think that is something that is not just a legacy thing, but also that production thing, that you can hear some of the exact same stuff and it's smashing every single time in great movies down the line.
I do just have to throw out, while we're watching, my fiance goes, this sounds like a knockoff of the Pirates of the Caribbean score. I'm like, well, it's not a knockoff.
Right, it's the predecessor.
This started. And I just want to just echo off of what Dana said. I think the point with Ben-Hur and Spartacus is it is the storyline, though. It's derivative of the storyline. I mean,
that's
so
fair.
It just kind of is the storyline. So that's
let's just take it out of the context of the setting. Okay, guy is a big time, well thought of actor or player in society. Then through events that are beyond his control, he becomes the low point.
Zero, yeah.
And then rises back up and ultimately defeats his nemesis at the end.
It's both movies, and both movies on the AFI list.
We're arguing between a 2.5 and a 3.5 on Novelty on the basis that it just reinvigorated the genre. Let's not parse it already when we're 2.5 hours in.
All right, whatever.
So, Rob, did you give a final number?
It's 3.5 and 4.5, so it is an 8 in this case.
Okay.
That feels a little high, but again, I have a couple points there that I do feel it does award a little bit higher, and that's maybe...
I think you're only a 0.5 higher than me, so
good. Okay, then I don't feel that bad.
I think you're all right.
All right, so that is a 7.13 average between the four of us. Classicness. This is the most difficult category to define. It's just simply how well has the movie aged or not. And you can take that in a multitude of different ways. Often we've tried to work backward where things age poorly more than they age well. And so we usually subtract points, but we've reformatted this slightly. Up until this season, it had been at a baseline of 7 and then worked backward. We're now at a 6 as we start. Dad, this tends to be your more nuanced category. And as a first timer, I will let you start here.
It's Rome. Of course, there are not going to be a lot of central female characters. There is also some diversity in the cast, which was good. The ultimate question in this film, as far as classicness, is if this film were to be taken and released today, would it still hold up? And the answer is yes. Because there's nothing in here that, you kind of go, or this didn't work, or this does work. So originally, I've been mulling this over most of the day as far as classicness specifically. And I've been talking myself higher as the day has progressed because of the fact that ultimately, again, you could release this. In fact, I would have probably preferred this had been released instead of Gladiator 2, but I guess I have the advantage of having watched Gladiator 2 before Gladiator 1.
Well, there you go.
So to that extent, I'm going to give it a little higher marks on classicness than I would. So I'm going to go with an 8 on classicness.
I'm going to echo Dana. I don't have anything to add or subtract. I think that's on point.
Rob, do you want to do your sequel hate now, or do you want to wait for me?
Oh, let's... no, I'm going to wait for you. Let's have you dig in first.
Because I'm in the camp that I think the remake kind of cheapens this and makes it a little bit more silly. Because I don't think that the plot line to the second one makes a whole lot of sense. And it kind of tries to... I don't know. There's pieces of the second one that undercut some of the story from this one and just ruin parts of the Maximus story where had you just left it alone and let it be its own thing, I think it would have been fine. If you're going under Dana's criteria of if it were released today, if Gladiator 2 is not existent and you just basically pick this out of the year 2000 and drop it into today, yeah, I think I can see where you're at with most of it. I think if you add a level of timelessness to it, where usually at about 25 years, I start to add like a point if something would still be somewhat popular today. And I'm willing to go down that road. But the more they make of this, and I think Rob mentioned this on our Dark Knight Rises show, which I know is going to make Kieran's blood boil because he's a huge Dark Knight Rises defender.
We stand with Rises.
I think it's a fun movie, but with each one that somehow loses some quality, and I know we're going to discuss this in a couple of weeks as well, when Rob's already telegraphed that he doesn't like the prequel or the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. But the more the product just dilutes, the more I find that the classicness may cheapen. And I don't want that to be a precursor of where we're going to go for the next 3 weeks with Star Wars, because that's just not going to make that conversation particularly fun. I'm fighting against where I was originally at. If we started at 6 and I haven't really found too many things that I can find particularly wrong, and I'm giving it an extra point for timelessness, I'll go with a 7 and just hold.
Okay. Yeah. Having seen the sequel, I think the sequel actually cheapened the classicness of this movie. I think that sequel brought it down. One of the things that I think Hollywood does really wrong now is they take stories that were complete and they try to make an expanded universe out of them. Like, oh my gosh, let's have another adventure with Maximus. And that is exactly what happened to Gladiator because Gladiator 2 was made. That movie is literally one of the worst pieces of film I've ever seen. My wife and I went to the theater. We had not been to an actual movie, thanks to the pandemic and everything like that, I found out 8 freaking years. And that movie single-handedly made me never want to go back to a movie theater again for another 8 years. It was that bad. We looked at each other after the movie and we said, did you hate this? And we've come up to a point where we now realize that we have to have a code word to each other that says, I freaking hate this and I want to leave. That we both understand that is code that you can use either in a movie or whatever, or at a place that you know, for your friend's house when it's time to go home or whatever it might be. That is how much I feel that Gladiator 2 has cheapened the original to the point where, much like some of the Star Wars stuff you were saying, Tom, that I usually don't recognize much after Empire with Star Wars. I like Return of the Jedi, okay, maybe, but like I really think that the classicness of Gladiator 1 was cheapened horrifically by Gladiator 2 because it's now part of this, and there's going to be a third one, and it's now part of this sequelitis thing and the problem that I think Hollywood has left, right, and center. And I really want to give this a higher classicness because I love the movie Gladiator. I think it's other than the foibles that we've talked about of, the script is not as strong as it should be, could be a little bit better. Yes, there's an extended cut, blah, blah, blah. I really think that this is, I want to go down to a 5 because again, we're starting at a 6. I'm already, I love this movie. If you're starting me at a 6, I have to go downward. I have to go down to a 5 overall for classicness now because I think
just want to throw out there. I'm not going to take much time on it, but he took an enormous amount of heat for killing off Russell Crowe in that movie. And the production companies wanted sequels. And he told his story. And
yeah,
like even Russell Crowe himself was like, dude, like it cost me a lot of money by killing me off. Like, so this could have been a bastardized thing from the 2000s on.
It could have been, but it wasn't. The right decision, if you ask me, was made. And
that makes it classic.
Somebody undid it 25 years later.
I think it's a movie in search of an actual story. Because it's labeled Gladiator 2 instead of being its own thing, you have to somehow tie it in, and the tie-ins didn't make sense or were very kind of like loose. They didn't feel that connected. And so because you're trying to fit this in at the last second, I just didn't. I was entertained by it, Rob. I'll say that. I didn't think it was a good movie, but I was at least entertained by it. But it's not a good written story, and that's my issue with it.
And sharks in the Colosseum. No.
Historically accurate.
Supposedly it happened.
But they didn't look like sharks. They looked like,
I mean, Bengal tigers in the
Sharknado
Colosseum is like, where are they getting those from?
It's ultimately what I've said, or the joke I made years ago after the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out. I said, Pirates of the Caribbean, the search for more cash.
yes,
And that's what Gladiator 2 was.
absolutely.
Let's come up with this movie. Well, but we have to throw Gladiator 2 because there's enough people who saw the original that they'll get people to sit in the seats and watch this. And we don't have to necessarily make it good. We'll make enough money.
Right, because we'll get Denzel to be himself in the movie, and people will go see it because Denzel. Because I even fell into that. I said, oh, Denzel, he's going to be fantastic. I bet he's going to play a great role. But no, he just played himself. And it's like...
So that's a 7 average between the four of us. Let's move to our last primary category for us. That is rewatchability. This is not a definable category because we have so many subjective things, including a test named after one of our guests. I will take the objective route here and say this is a 2.5-hour movie that is entertaining, and I don't think it feels quite its length. Like, when we've had a ton of 2.5-hour movies this year nominated for Best Picture, I'd much rather watch this than several of the things that were up for stuff this year that needed to be edited down a half an hour. But there are some moments in here that I do feel it slows down a little bit too much, and the cohesion's not always quite there. There can be times where it's a little bit difficult to follow what the true story as opposed to just simply the plot is. And it has great action sequences. I take a little bit of offense at the editing and the slow-mo that I think, especially now in 2025, I find a bit grating. I have this at what I think is a reasonably objective 7. So we will release it to the subjective people. Rob has a 10.
Yeah, because
Kieran
as
has a
much as I
9.
hate the sequel, I love the original.
Close, Tom. I have it at 8.5, just because there's a slight tinge of an exhaustive nature of this. Just there's a little bit of Roman politics of it all that does drag. So there is like the thought of watching it for this. There was a little internal gasp of, oh, I get it's not quite like the 90-minute 12 Angry Men, like. So 8.5. Yeah. Love it.
I'm at a 6, which is where my benchmark is. Will I rewatch it? Yes. Will I go out of my way to rewatch it? Probably not. But, is it something that I'm going to not want to rewatch if somebody suggests it? So that's why the 6 is the sweet spot for me.
So that averages out to a 7.88 between the four of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 90% for Google users and an 87% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.85. So to repeat the categories, we had an 8.38 for Legacy, a 9.75 for Impact and Significance, a 7.13 for Novelty, a 7 for Classicness, a 7.88 for Rewatchability, and an 8.85 for audience score, giving us a final total of 48.99, and currently placing it on our list 0.01 ahead of Roman Holiday and just behind Ben-Hur for 73rd.
That's funny.
I mean, you got to be kidding me.
That's funny.
That's incredible. That's just incredible. Roman Holiday and Ben-Hur. Come on.
Oh my
let's
God,
go.
that is funny.
We do this
Crown
seemingly
us.
every week.
This
I
has
swear,
gotta
we're
be the
not
peak.
trying to, we all come independently in here and do this, and yet somehow it's like the synergy always works
To the
together.
point, I don't prepare my scores until you actually ask me them. Like, that's all. Oh my God.
I mean, or I think all 3 movies where the Roman Colosseum is intertwined or next to each other. No, it's amazing.
That is so
I do
funny.
my scores and then earlier in the day, and then I will adjust them and I change them while we're sitting here, sometimes based on how I think and feel by the discussion. So, yeah.
What we
Interesting.
podcast here, guys, just echoes in eternity, and this is just evidence here. Roman Holiday and Ben-Hur, you got to be kidding me.
As always, if you have any comments on our score, and I do think the internet may have some comments for us on this, you can write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us at Gmote Podcast on just about every major social media platform, except apparently LinkedIn. But Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you're one of the people on BPC, apparently you're going to be annoyed this week with how many clips you're going to see of us. Just throwing that out there, because we do put out a lot of social clips. But yeah, you can find us on any of those, or you can find us on the website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote Podcast. All right, let's move to remaining questions on this one. I find it a little bit difficult to believe that Maximus can just simply be picked up and put in slavery, like, from his home.
That is exactly the case, because under Roman law, as a Roman citizen, you had safeguards and protections. All he had to do is, the minute he got any place within Roman territory, saying, I am, and give his name, I am a Roman citizen. And he would have been taken out and put us into a safe location, and they would have investigated and determined whether indeed he was a Roman citizen and had an opportunity to prove his independence.
I guess that's maybe the one saving grace then, that he, since he had a death mark, did not want to be found out. Because if they're going to do an investigation, all of a sudden he's back on the chopping block. But then again, he's also in the arena where he's got to kill or be executed. So it's not a lot of great options, I suppose, but it just felt a little contrived.
Well, I mean, too, there's, the Roman Empire may have conquered Germania at that point in time, but, it's kind of like one of those things. People walked around. People were sometimes nomadic. I'm sure there were plenty of small things crisscrossing the territory the Romans held that probably didn't really give a shit about what the laws were, because they lived outside the law. I think looking at that, sometimes, hey man, this guy's a strong fighter. He's probably a Legion deserter. Let's pick him up and go. Human beings are awful, what it boils down to.
That's all of my questions. Does anybody else have any remaining questions?
I just got one little fun one that I always think about when I watch this film. You know how I don't know if you do or you don't know, but Pixar does these like little shorts. Like if you've seen like Cars, they have like a little Cars short where it's a little 5-minute clip. I want a little like Pixar short of like Tigris and his like plight. Like he's this retired gladiator. He's an undefeated retired gladiator, like sitting on the shore drinking Mai Tais, and they just come to him and they're like, hey, we need you back in the Coliseum. There's this guy, you can't beat him. And he's just like, why? Do I really have to? Like, what would compel? I mean, I guess the Emperor telling you have to was, but like, I kind of want to hear his story. I want to know what, and he doesn't die at the end, so he might even have a little backstory. So I've always been a little fascinated by that character.
I would love to see that done in like the Pixar CGI, kind of like almost like Up, but not like, like Tigris is sort of that same shape as Carl, and like,
I guess I'll go back, but you're sure he's not that good? Oh no, he stinks. We picked him up out of nowhere. He's no good. All right.
Now
there's gonna be tigers everywhere. Don't worry.
Now he walks with a limp because that spike went through his foot.
Any other remaining questions? Hearing none, I would like to thank both of our guests for being back with us yet again. It is the first time we've ever had 2 10-time club members on the show at the same time.
Let's go.
Wear your shirts with pride, gentlemen.
10 times. 10 times.
We have not yet figured out what to give for 15. So we'll apparently need to figure that out rather quickly, because if Rob is doing 11 and then he's got 3 Lord of the Rings movies coming next season, that's going to get pretty close. So, yeah. But remind the people again what you're working on and where they can find you. Kieran, let's start with you this time.
Best Picture Cast, just so it sounds, 3 words, Best Picture Cast. We cover all the Best Picture Cast films, all the winners of Best Picture, and yeah, just reach out to us on social media, wherever you find your podcasts. Come out and find us. And yeah, we're running to the end of the list, but we will be around doing much more. So Best Picture Cast. Look forward to hearing from you.
And Rob, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Yeah, folks can find me not just with my company, Westport Studios, for the B2B side of podcasts, but I also host my own show, B2B Business Class, where you can find on any major podcast platform. And then, of course, if folks are interested in connecting professionally, I got LinkedIn. I got some fun content there. And I'm always, again, looking to talk to people who are pod curious, as I call it. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing that I get to do for a job, which is great. So thanks again, Tom.
You're very welcome, sir. It is always a joy to have you both back here with us. And as always, if you are looking for any of their links or connections, that is both available in the show notes of this episode, or you can find it on the website as well. All right, remaining thoughts for the week. Dad, do you have any?
Saw a couple weeks ago The Amateur with Rami Malek and Rachel Brosnahan. Not what I would call Oscar-worthy, but it was fun. And so to that extent, if a 1.5 on the Oscar scale of 1 to 5, 4.5 on the fun, just going out and having a good time with a bag of popcorn, 4.5. Yeah.
Fair enough. As for me, I'm going to have to focus a little bit on TV here because I have not seen a lot of new releases, and project-wise and other things, I've mostly been trying to keep afloat with both school and the show. But as far as TV viewing, the new season of Hacks is out. The first couple of episodes, I was very pleasantly surprised that they're maintaining their level of quality. So I'm glad to see that that's back if you're a fan of that show. And then I will also highlight, very rarely do I think any of the franchise fair TV shows really works. There have been rare exceptions in a few times. I was a big lover of the Daredevil series on Netflix. And now that they've brought it back, I was very apprehensive after the first 2 episodes of this new Daredevil series on Disney Plus. But after the first 2 episodes, if you can get through those, that was the first week's release. Everything from 3 through 9 has been absolutely awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed it up to this point. So if you enjoyed the original Netflix series, I would highly recommend that. So that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. May the Force be with you. Next week, for our 260th episode, we welcome back Shane Rogers of the Midnight Facts for Insomniacs Podcast and Jesse Sertle of Cinemadison to discuss the indie darling that is Star Wars from 1977. Written and directed by George Lucas. Cinematography by Gilbert Taylor. Music by John Williams. Starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Alec Guinness. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's REELGOOD.
Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle @GMOPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.